Hey, welcome to yet another episode of the Teachers Lounge Talk Show. We are here live at the mothership, better known as WHPR TV 33 Studios. Before we go on, we have to thank R.J. Watkins and the Watkins family, Henry Tyler, for allowing WHPR TV 33 to even exist. Of course, we have to thank Minister Malik Shabazz and the Get Up Stand Up Show for sharing his platform with the Teachers Lounge every Thursday from 8 to 9. As long as there's a Get Up Stand Up Show, there will be a Teachers Lounge Talk Show. We also want to thank Brother David and AvailableGeeks.com, who has been our sponsor here for the Teachers Lounge for the wonderful 3 years that we have been on. Holla Facebook. Hi Facebook. We're here at the Teachers Lounge. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome, 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 welcome. Give us a call here. We're going to get our talk, I'm sorry, I'm getting all discombobulated. We have a wonderful co-host here. What's going on, co-host? Save me. Tired.
Well, we've got birthday boy co-host.
Yes,
right?
We have a birthday in the house. Maybe that's why I'm messing things up right now. Can we sing happy birthday to Really? No, we're going to sing.
Oh my God.
Well, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear. We're here live at the mothership, and we're just feeling wonderfully good. If you notice, we all have on red. You notice this? And we have on red because we are supporting, first of all the teachers across the country, but especially our teachers in Arizona and Colorado, who find themselves in a situation, I guess, that we saw ourselves in many years ago. Low test scores, and they want to take your money and freeze your salary. It's crazy. It's crazy. So we stand in solidarity with you, teachers in Arizona, teachers in Colorado. We encourage you, get up and stand up. Keep doing what you're doing. It makes a difference. It does.
Speaking of money, for anybody that's watching as a DPSCE employee, I hear we're supposed to be getting some money. Steps are going to be unfrozen in the fall, and teachers who has
been fighting very hard for it, but on top of that, Dr. B is trying to recruit more teachers. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that the union has been pushing in these negotiations, you can't attract teachers if you don't pay them. And you can't keep the ones that you have if you do not pay them. Mm-hmm. Teachers are just leaving left and right. Now, we should have more money than we are getting, but we do have to be realistic. We're not going to go back to where we were 10 years ago. One reason why we don't have the population that we had 10 years ago. If you remember, we used to be able to fill up Cobo Hall when we had our annual meetings or conventions or whatever, and we just don't. What do we go from 12,000? I believe it was at least 12,000. 7 to 10 years ago, what do we have? 3,000 now. So we have to be realistic about that, but we still have to get paid.
And I think a big point is if you're going to hire new teachers and give them increased steps, it's not fair to keep the old teachers frozen and behind, because sure, we only have 190 teacher shortage right now, and I say only, even though that's still a ridiculous number. It's only going to get bigger if teachers see that ones that are here are not valued. And you can go anywhere else and get paid more.
Well, it's going to be 191 in September because I'm retiring.
Oh.
However, I still will be. I belong to 2 educations, so I don't have too much else to do. Yeah. It's almost like they're trying to justify. Yeah. They have to do something to justify. But they do.
Well, but the point that I heard at the union meeting that really struck me was, why are we going after the teachers and dress code and attendance? Well, we still don't have a security plan across the district for an active shooter. Mm-hmm. We still don't have policies to keep the kids safe. So why do we care what the teacher is wearing when that should be the last priority right now? if we really want to continue bringing DPSCD back, we need to make it a safe place and a place where test scores are going up, and that needs to come before punishing teachers because of what they're wearing. And I think that's the issue that a lot of people are focusing on is we have a teacher shortage. Why do we want to increase it?
Right. And I agree with that. I do. However, I would like my teacher to be appropriately dressed. You know, I don't want, you know, my daughter looking at some teacher, whether they're male or female, with body parts hanging out, you know, and they lean over and you see their cleavage and you see their breasts wiggling. You know, I mean, that's cute for the nightclub, but it's not cute for impressionable kids, young boys whose penises, they get hard at 7th, 8th, 9th grade. You know, I mean, why do that? Why? Well, you have a penis. I mean, let it come out. I mean, the men, when you...
Never a dull moment here, ladies and gentlemen.
What I need to say is...
comical what you're saying, but on a serious side, if you're going to be an example, you should not look like the student. There should be a dress code to distinguish the teacher from the student. That's been a pet peeve of mine, William. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and I agree with you, caller.
That caller sounds familiar.
But you know what? In DPSCD, I don't really see too many teachers
Hold on, caller.
that would get in trouble for dressing like they're going to the nightclub. If anything, they would come overly comfortable because there's a need to be overly comfortable.
Right.
Because, you know, you got to run down to this hallway, deal with this situation, or maybe you're on the floor with your kindergartners. So I don't like the fact that they're enforcing the dress code policy in that perspective. If you're underdressed, because sometimes you need to be comfortable to do the job at hand, because we do a lot of running around that school building, and I don't see a lot of teachers in DPSCD wearing stilettos. They wouldn't make it through the day with all the steps that they have to do.
Now let's take this call. Caller, welcome to the Teacher's Lounge. What's on your mind? Caller, are you there?
Yeah, we're here.
Yes. How can we help you?
Hey, these bitches look too ugly on their side. They're tucking in their side or tucking side.
I don't understand a word you said,
English,
caller.
caller, English.
I have no, he hung up. I don't know what you said, caller. Feel free to call back. But I agree with what you said. I agree with what you say. You know, teachers are comfortable. I remember one time when I first started working at Netflix, I came, it's like Friday, and I came in a nice, comfortable sweatsuit, right, with sneakers, matching sneakers.
Right.
And I did get an email from my wonderful principal giving me a copy of the dress code and reminding me that we're professional and you have to dress a certain way. And cool, I'm like, okay, I guess we don't wear sweats on Fridays here, which was fine, you know, but I took the correction. I didn't get upset. I was like, okay, no problem. And I rolled with it.
That's up to the principal, because I know some schools, remember at Schultz, when Dr. Lyons was around, she used to give us free dress Friday.
Hold on, caller.
We would have to bring like $1 or something like that, but the monies would go towards something for the school. And I think it's a good idea to have dress down Fridays.
Before we go, before you get that, I just want to, I personally am a little concerned. You know, we were supposed to have a guest tonight. I know him to be a very dependable person, and he has not called or shown up, so just put a little prayer or meditation out there and hope everything is all right, because he is a very dependable person, so I hope everything is going well with him. So, all right.
Caller, welcome to the Teacher's Lounge. How can we help you? Hello, caller, you there?
Oh, that's me.
Yes, how are you?
I'm fine.
Good. You have a question?
No, I don't have a question. If you want to say me.
Please, please.
The dress code thing, I think that's very important. I don't think it's important. There's more things that the money can go toward as far as the kids are concerned. Let's say counselors, social workers, psychiatrists, teachers. Because my son has an anger problem. His teacher or whoever is in the classroom with him should have a psychiatrist, something in there. If my child gets suspended for some anger issues, shouldn't he go and talk to a therapist or something to figure out why he's so angry, what set him off, and redirect him so that the first thing that they will do to a child is kick him out of school? If I keep him out of school, truancy officers will be after me because I'm preventing him from cutting up or acting out in a public setting. But if I come up there and I redirect him in my own way, then it's abuse. Then CPS is mentioned. But it's not going to be all on me because my child has to go to school regardless of how he's feeling that day. So I'm going to send my child to school, and if he's having a terrible day, where's the psychiatrist? Where's the therapist? The dress code, that's very unimportant.
That's right. And you know what? Caller? I got some good news. I got some good news for you. Yesterday in our staff meeting, we were going over the budget with our principal, and he was telling us that we have monies for a mental health expert. You know, we have monies for a school psychologist and also a mental health therapist. Now, I don't know necessarily where we're going to get them from. You know, it's hard to retain teachers, and it's hard to pull in those special educators, you know, that want to work with kids. But we do have monies in the budget for a mental health therapist. And it was funny, somebody said, is the mental health therapist going to be for the kids or the students? I mean, the kids or the teachers. Probably a little bit of both. But to answer your question, caller, to your concerns, there is...
Unless you read or study about these things, we suffer under the myth, and I hate to say it all the time, that we have a bunch of parents that do not care about their children. And on the flip side, we have a lot of parents who think, you don't care about our child. Today, working with some teachers, we almost just broke down. Here's a boy who has only been in a foster home for 2 days. He acted up. He's banging his head on the door of the of one of the rooms because he had some discipline problems. I met him first thing in the morning. I could look at his face and see that he was having some problems. You know, aside from just adjusting to being in a new environment. So when I called what I thought was the mother, it was a foster parent. She doesn't know him. She just had him for 2 days. She's lamenting she didn't know anything about him. We don't know anything about his background at all. But now we know he has some problems. So you're right. Instead of worrying about the dress code or whatever the case may be, we need to start taking care of these children. They are having some issues, and it's beyond what we can do as teachers. We were trained in pedagogy. Right. We don't have training in psychology, child psychology, and things like that. In fact, when they do teacher training, some of those little electives that we had to take, maybe we should get rid of those and start having more training about, you know, things like what they call adverse childhood experiences and toxic stress, like the lady that we have on. These are clinical terms. These are what we're facing with our children every day. And we just don't know what to do. And I think sometimes when we run across kids like that, if we don't label them, we just don't know what to do with them. So,
and unfortunately, I don't mean to cut you off, but it seems to me that when you have a child like that has those taxing problems, it seems the teacher gets attacked, you know, and we're told to differentiate. Right. We're told to, you got to figure a plan out. You have to work one-on-one. And the more you try and the more you fail, you're told that you're not doing good enough. You're told that, you know, you got to try something else. You're told that it's your responsibility. You know, so it's just
that's why I'm glad that they're bringing in these mental health experts.
It's not going to be enough. I hate to say it. It'll help a little bit, but it's not going to be enough. But in any event, I'm excited about our guests. We're going to go to a quick break here.
Are we ready for you?
He is going to talk to us about the history of Detroit public school. Oh, we have one more caller.
We're waiting for our engineer to give us the clear that we can go on break. Hello, caller, are you there? Can you speak up, caller? I can go here.
Hold on, caller, we can't hear you. Junior, can you turn them up just a tinch?
Oh, that's
Is that better?
yes,
Yeah.
sir.
Yeah, much
Thank
better.
you.
When I was teaching, the kids, students, they had to have their, shirts tucked in.
Right.
I would wear my shirt tucked in my pants. And I always, I tried to model for the students and that kind of thing.
Right.
And but as far as the dress code goes, especially, when you're talking about teachers having a dress code, no, I wouldn't do that. I mean, it's enough that you got students that, in some instances, have a dress code. And but for the most part, I figure as long as the student looks neat and they, got the, got the shirt tucked in, especially the boys, and that's fine. The dress code, that's one more thing that, to me, is not necessary.
Right, yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
like the previous caller said,
Okay.
we got more important
Thank you
things to
so
worry
much.
about
Thanks,
Great
Tony.
point. Great point.
than how the teachers are dressed.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So we are going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to have a wonderful guest, Mr. Ken Coleman. We have him here. So hopefully we'll see you back 2 minutes, something like that.
Don't touch
Don't go
that
away.
guy.
Don't touch.
Don't go away.
Don't touch that guy.
I can sit back. Are you sure? Yeah.
You sure, Marty?
All right, yeah, Dr. Coleman. Oh, hey, man, stuff happens. All that means is that you just have to come back now.
I can. If you're doing it, I guess I can.
Oh, okay.
I'll do it.
Okay. For your intro, just to make sure I have everything right. You're former Michigan Chronicle senior editor and Michigan Democratic Party spokesman. He's a former radio producer, newsman, and political consultant. In fact, he served as the press secretary. Are you sure? Just say this came from me, y'all.
Okay,
All
okay.
right, can everyone smile?
All right.
Should say history and state of DPSCD.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, that's
Let's see if I can.
okay, sweet.
One of the things I have as gifts for each of you.
Oh,
We have gifts.
The latest book that I did with
Thank you.
my son. And it does have
Thank you.
right, right.
It's got
Thank
Fanny
you.
Richardson there.
Oh,
How old is it?
Nice letter. He's a fourth grader.
Oh, well.
Hoping to get 2 years younger. I'm looking forward to it.
He played baseball last year. He's still trying to lead.
They're a rookie. I
Okay. That's good.
all right, well.
But anyway, let's get into it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, that's
Go
yours.
ahead. That's yours.
Thank you.
So you are communications specialist. So you want
So
to present your
do-
book? And we can always have you back to talk about
And whatever you.
Okay, well, I would like her to just introduce, and then we're just going to talk about the history of DPS.
Let's talk
Part
about the-
one.
Yeah, I mean, and you know.
There's signs.
Let's get right into it.
Hey, y'all, this Ken. He's so
Okay.
Well, it's just that
I
I
know.
mean, the topic is.
Yeah, that's
Let's
fine.
get into that.
Okay.
Are you sure you don't want to horses? We can
Oh,
switch really
no,
fast.
no.
Are you
It'll
sure?
be fine. Yeah, it's the same thing. Let's just keep going.
Yeah, we
So
gotta have a pretty lady in
we're
there.
ready.
Oh, y'all, you so special. Like, yay, look, we got a kid. I appreciate this. People don't bring this
Leslie
up.
killing me. What you talking about? So you had a penis too? Oh my God!
We were talking about dress
I heard. Oh, you were listening? Oh, my God.
We're about to go back to
We thought maybe that's right. No. We said maybe that's what I did. He got close to the studio, heard that, and then turned around.
Facebook
Okay,
Live.
here we go.
We're going back.
Which camera?
Straight ahead.
Straight ahead.
Hello, we are back here at the Teachers Lounge Talk Show. We are so thrilled. Our guest, our very special guest has arrived. we have Mr. Ken Coleman. And I am so happy. Look, Ken brought gifts. He brought all of the hosts a book that he wrote. And I just appreciate that because nobody brings the same thing. We're teachers. People take from us. And so I'm just so happy. You know, I'm so happy. So, sir, I'm going to leave the ball in your court because you are you're a wealth of knowledge on history. So can you please talk with us either about your wonderful book, $1 Million Worth of Nerve, the story of Detroit's Black Bottom and Paradise Valley community?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for coming.
I apologize for being late. One of the things that I've always, in this journey that I've done in the last several years in doing African American life in Detroit, I feel like we have a lot to share as African Americans. I think our history is unique as it relates to Detroit Public School history, and I've tried to impart that in all of my books. To be honest with you, I'm most proud of the book that I've done with my 9-year-old. All of my ancestors, Detroit 1917, and that's a gift that I have for the entire team. The reason why I lift that up is we have been an integral part of Detroit Public School history. And so when William asked me to be a guest, I said I most certainly would love to be here because I like to lift that up, and I'm glad to be here and talk a lot about that.
Well, one of the reasons why I wanted Ken to come on because
Happy birthday, by the way.
Oh, by the way, okay, please no more singing.
All right.
Yeah, we had the morbid tabernacle choir. But anyway, one of the reasons why I wanted them to come on, a lot, you know, I hear a lot of conversation about the revitalization of Detroit, like it just disappeared, like it was our fault. And I wanted to really concentrate on the public school system because I went through DPS. A lot of people I know who are successful went through DPS. We did not destroy DPS. There are systemic things that destroyed DPS. It didn't have anything to do with the population. It didn't have anything to do with the low quality of teachers. And we have just told Mr. Coleman he's going to have to come back. But I wanted him to start today with just a history of DPS so some people can get an idea of where we were and how we got to where we are now. Because unfortunately, a lot of our residents, a lot of our teachers, a lot of people who have children in DPS or those who left for greener pasture, so to speak, they need to find out what happened. And I think as DPS has crumbled, so to speak, we still have the same people could build it back up. So if you want to start with that,
I appreciate that.
Let's start with that.
It's a great place to start. I mean, the reality is, and we talk about the history of our country as being a democratic republic, and that we have been around for 200 some odd years. But Detroit, as a city, as an entity, has been around for much longer than that. I tell people all the time, and people are, some people are surprised to hear that we've been around since the 1700s. One of the things that Jackson and I write about in the All of My Ancestors, Detroit 1917, is particularly black folks have been in this on these grounds in which we work and we live. We've been on these grounds since the 1700s, William. Even before our country was codified as a democracy. I say that to say that a lot of people will relegate us, African Americans, as being slaves, as being people who should be proud to just be here. We've been on these grounds before Michigan was a state, before this union, United States of America was a codified republic. We've been organizing here. We've been living here. our oldest church, Second Baptist Church, was formed in 1836. 1836. And so we have to understand that, and that's a place by which, Donovan, that we need to understand where our people have been here, and once we understand that, that gives us the power and the strength to move forward. And so, you know, when people talk about Detroit Public Schools and whether or not Detroit Public Schools is going through a series of challenges, whether or not we are responsible enough to carry themselves as an institution, we've been here. We've been here longer than a lot of European ancestors, and you know, there are lots of folks that get upset about that, but I say that from a position of strength, and that helps us move forward. So, you know, when you talk about somebody like Fannie Richards, the first African American teacher in Detroit, came here as a freed African American in 1840, starting, and that's how we need to operate moving forward in 2018 and moving beyond. And so my whole position is, if you are someone who says that Detroit Public Schools has challenges, I understand that, I appreciate that, but I also say that we as African Americans have been here from the beginning, and we've made a way out of no way, and that's what we have to. That's how, as all of you go into classrooms each day, that's what I would argue, that you have to have that spirit, that sense. We have made a way out of no way. We know how to educate our people, and we need to do that with from a position of strength. That's what I mean.
So when you're talking about Miss Richards here, I don't know, we can get a chance to talk much beforehand, but could you talk about early education for African Americans?
Sure.
As far as historically you can go back.
Sure. Well, let's be candid. I mean, in the 1800s in Michigan, there was a two-tiered structure set up for education of young people who lived in these environments.
Right.
One, there was a colored, they call it colored at the time, colored structure for young people that grew up in that system, for young people that were part of that community. And then there was a structure for European Americans, or whites. And up until 1869, that structure was a dual structure. But people like Fannie Richards and white people like Chaubain, who created the anti-slavery society, that ultimately created a system where African Americans would be respected in Detroit. Up until that time, up until 1869, there was a two-tier structure, but blacks and whites came together and said there ought to be a structure by which all people who lived in Detroit's environment should be educated together. And that's what happened. They went all the way to the Supreme Court. The Detroit Public Schools, quite frankly, fought it. Fought for a two-tiered structure, a white structure and a black structure. And going all the way to the Supreme Court, in its wisdom, said there ought not be a segregated system of educating blacks and whites. There ought to be a system of educating all children. And Fannie Richards again and others won that case. And
what year was that?
1869.
That was pretty progressive for the courts in
Very
1869.
Very progressive, not only for this region, but very progressive for the entire United States. And so, from 1869 moving forward, there was a Detroit Public School district that educated all of its children, black and white. And there aren't a lot of states or commonwealths that can say the same thing. in that regard. And so I think we oftentimes, and sometimes rightly so, criticize our state for not doing the right thing. But that is one step in the right direction that the state did, that the state Supreme Court did make. And from that point on, Fannie Richards gets hired as the principal of the first African, they call it colored at the time.
Right.
She was principal of the first colored school. And that is our entree. Men and women who happen to teach. That is our first entree into formalized state-sponsored education in Michigan.
I think about when you were talking about that case, I'm thinking about like Eyes on the Prize, for example, because they have the best footage about how, and we're talking about up north here. See, a lot of people just thought it was gravy, up north. But I think about Boston, and that's the one that sticks out the most. How, and this was what, late '60s,
'50s and '60s.
'50s and '60s.
We were
how
progressive
they were
in that sense.
Yeah, about how they fought. So how did that go here when the Supreme Court came with that decision? Because I'm seeing the footage now about how they lost their minds in Boston when they were trying to integrate the schools.
Well, let's be clear and candid. I mean, everything that I said is true. In 1869, the state Supreme Court said that African Americans and whites would be educated in the same structure. While that is true, there was lots of rocky road.
Okay, I would imagine it would have been
ahead, and that goes well into the 1900s, up until the 60s and 70s. It's not to say that it was a rosy picture, but I think we were progressive as a state. Many of us grew up, some of us grew up in the 60s and 70s and were either students or educators when the NAACP sued the state, sued the Detroit Public Schools, arguing that the district had practiced racial discrimination against African Americans. The case Milliken versus Bradley in 1971 argued, and it was an NAACP case, and largely argued that African Americans had been discriminated against by the Detroit Public Schools in the state of Michigan, even though African Americans were allowed to go to school in that structure. They argued that in 1971 that there was a sort of separate but equal existence going on in Michigan in the same way that that Brown versus Board in Topeka, Kansas had been carried out since 1975.
Right.
However, there's still a dichotomy between the financing and the carrying out of services for people that look like me and people that live in Oakland or Macomb County. And so we have to, there is a picture that we can present that is progressive yet, but also at the same time challenging, just as challenging as public education in the South or public education in Topeka, Kansas.
Well, going back to, let's go back to, I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but we didn't get a chance to. Let's go back to Henry Ford and his $5 a day and the Great Migration, and when all African Americans started coming up north. What was it like here as far as education in Detroit during that time? I mean, the structure, if you can. What was the structure of the buildings? I have posters where I show kids they're going into these wooden places and it's dirt and all the kids are running.
So around the stove.
What was the infrastructure like for when people started coming up here to work in the factories? How would you assess what it looked like?
Let's be clear, right? And so Henry Ford in 1914 says, "I will pay my workers $5 a day to work in my factories, to build automobiles. The assembly line as we know it today was really founded and integrated at that time in the 19 teens. Mass production. There wasn't a whole lot of placement on educational attainment, right? Let's be clear. And that just wasn't for African Americans, that's for white folks.
Right,
too.
right.
People forget, I mean, as African Americans, a lot of times we forget, we talk about our migration from the southern states to northern communities like Detroit and Chicago and Philadelphia. But there were a lot of white folk that came here too, hearing the same call that Henry Ford talked about in 1914.
Right.
I paid $5 for that. There wasn't a premium placed on education as we know it. High school attainment, entree into college, university, a degree. It was really about providing a workforce in Detroit,
Right.
for building and creating the automotive industry and the ancillary businesses around that. So it is one of the things that I always try to point out is, you know, because lots of African Americans will say, well, we were programmed to sort of work in the plant. It just wasn't us.
Yeah,
White
yeah,
folk, too.
right. Can you read stop? Can you read on?
Look, you know, and a lot of us know the story. I mean, my grandfather worked for 2 automobile makers at the same time. I mean, you could literally.
Right.
I watched a documentary a couple of weeks ago, sitting on a panel, and a gentleman who's still with us now talked about growing up, coming of age in the '60s, and he got fired from one plant.
Mm-hmm.
And heard about another plant hiring and got hired that same day. I say all that to say, this part of the country, this neck of the woods, Detroit, was an automobile and automation community. And it did not place the same emphasis on educational attainment that other communities and across the nation did. I happened to go to school in Atlanta, the Morris Brown College, and what I found is as an 18 or 19-year-old, the black kids that were going to what we call it the AUC, the Atlanta University Center, Clark, Spelman, Morris Brown, Morehouse, they were coming from all over the country. And you sit in the dorm rooms, you talk to people your age and talk about what their families did and how they came to be. We did not have the same processes for educational attainment and everything that came along with that other parts of the country did. It's not a knock against. I mean, we made great. Look, we sent our kids to college.
Right.
We had homes up north. And what you walk away, at least for me, what you walk away leaving with is, while we put the world on wheels, no doubt, and Motown came after that. We've got tremendous reasons to be happy about what we've done here. We haven't made the transition, I would argue. And as educators, I think that what I would say is we haven't made the transition to what is the next big thing that propels the young people that you teach every day. What's the next big thing that they can be excited about, that propels them to do extraordinary things? And that's the challenge, I think, that we face moving forward. I love to talk about history, but I think you have to tie it to what's coming next.
It seems to be the kids love these video games and this artificial intelligence now. And do you see that that's something that our kids can really sink their teeth into?
I think we can. I mean, look, we
not just playing at the
sure
developing them.
the developing. Like I got a 9-year-old. And part of what I'm trying to figure out for the summer, you know, William and I have talked about, you know, my desire for my kid to play baseball and to be active, but I also want, you know, this whole coding thing, this whole industry of kids not only being on YouTube, but creating the next big thing on YouTube, right?
Yes.
And so demonstrate in a tangible way that just like Henry Ford in 1900, 1914, 1915 decided, I'm going to create an industry, or I'll be part of an industry, and I'll create the next big thing in that industry with the assembly line. We've got to demonstrate that we can do the same thing. And I know, I'm sure, not only I'm sure we can, we can and we must.
And we must.
And we shall, right?
Let's,
Caller, welcome to the Teachers Lounge. How can we help you?
How you doing today?
Fine,
very
thank
well.
you.
First one, you start CD33, Comcast, 90, WHPR, Detroit, right? I was just trying to know for the last 6 months, since, how y'all doing staff for Mr. Misha Bar, and I know y'all represent Detroit Public School. I would like to ask y'all something based on the current political climate. May I ask y'all to ask a kid, a senior citizen, to draw a picture of their favorite politician that's running and in your office or election between now and August?
well, that's a kind of hard one. If I had to draw it, my paper would be blank. And you know, I don't know. I am not enamored with politicians. I'm sorry. You know, I mean, because of all the promises I've heard, and I just turned 64 today.
To give us a proper education, we need to maybe get freedom schools and educate our own.
I think so. What do you think?
Well,
We have 3 minutes.
Well, absolutely,
Well,
and I understand. I mean, I don't. We still control the institution by which most African American young people are educated. So I don't know that we need to separate, at least today in 2018, into a freedom school. But we also need to. But what we do need to do is recognize the power that we do have and harness it. I'm a big, William, you know, I'm a big fan of local history. I think it helps to propel us. I think that there are some roadmaps that we can see in history that has happened that can help us move forward. I think we need to propel those. Detroit Public Schools has never done it, whether it's been Arthur Jefferson or Deborah McGriff or Tim Burnley or the long line of emergency managers, or even our current superintendent, Dr. Vitti. I will give him credit that he has said that he will infuse more local history into our curriculum. I give him credit for that. But that hasn't happened up until now. And we've been running, as African Americans, we've been running the district since the 1970s. I don't think we need to separate, to your question.
Right.
Yes.
I think we need to strengthen what we have within the district.
Yes.
Well, for a brief period, we did have some effective African-centered education here, and but that seemed to have waned. But time is running out. This is unfortunate. So this just means stay tuned for Ken Coleman Part 2.
Yes.
We
I'd love
will
to
do
come
this
back.
again. Thank everybody for the birthday wishes.
Yes.
Guess I'll just roll on in here next time.
Wheelchair and all.
Yeah, wheelchair and all.
Thank
Automatic
you
one.
so much. We'll see you next week here on the Teachers Lounge from 8 to 9. A wonderful guest, Ken Coleman, our birthday boy. Marnita over there. We got Brother Donovan. Thank you so much. See you next Thursday, 8 o'clock. Bye-bye. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.